All right, letting everyone into the room. Good evening, everyone. Happy Wednesday.
This
My
is
name
so
is
cool.
Amanda Sutton. I'm here in Victory Hills of Albuquerque, my virtual office for Bookworks, your 36-year-old independent bookstore. We're located down in the North Rio Grande River Valley in a local shopping plaza with Flying Star, Penny Smith's, Willow, Sarabande, lots of great little local shops. We hope to see you soon. We've just reopened after being closed for the pandemic, and we now have hours 10 to 4, Tuesday through Saturday. Of course, you can shop 24/7 from our website, which is our name without the O's, bkwrks.com. I will drop a link to the works from tonight's 3 poets, not 1, 2, but 3 poets we have this evening, orchestrated by David Meischen. We also have Jill Alexander S Baum joining us from Austin, Texas, and Bruce Snyder tuning in from San Francisco, California. So we're looking forward to hearing new work from these 3. They met each other way back in the day, back in Texas, so maybe they can talk a little bit more about how their friendship began and how their careers have transpired over the years. I know David Meischen from his role over at Dos Gatos Press. They host our monthly Wing Beats Poetry Workshop, which is the second Tuesday, I believe, right now on Zoom. So if you're feeling like doing some writing, be sure to check that out. All right, David, I'm going to let you take it away. David Meischen, the editor of Dos Gatos Press, most recently a Pushcart Prize winner for poetry in his latest collection, Anyone's Son. David, thank you so much for joining us and for introducing us to these 2 other fine writers this evening.
Thanks everyone for being here. This is wonderful. It's so good to see these faces. I have to give one shout out. Jack Francis is in the audience. He and I have been best friends for 51 years. It is so good to see all of you. In the fall of 1993, I was in my mid-40s. I was taking whatever poetry writing seminars I could get at the University of Texas. Bruce Snyder, who was a baby then, much younger than I, started the program the fall of 93. Fall of 94, Jill Alexander Essbaum joined the program. So we've known one another since then, writing poems together in graduate poetry writing seminars. They both finished MFAs at the University of Texas and have gone on to have what I would characterize as stellar careers, writing poetry and teaching, both of them. So, and then last year, at some point, I became aware that Jill had a new book out, then Bruce had a new book out. I actually saw Bruce briefly at the AWP conference early last March. There were several thousand of us foolish enough to attend before we had pandemic lockdown. At any rate, I thought, wouldn't it be cool for the 3 of us to read? And this is the result. So what we're going to do is each one of us will have about 15 minutes to read. We're going to start with me, and then I'll introduce Bruce, then I'll introduce Jill, and you'll hear from 3 of us. One thing you can do as we're reading, if you have a question for one of us, or if a question pops into your head for 2 of us or all 3 of us, please feel free to put a question in the chat. I think there'll be a few minutes left at the end, and Amanda, at readings we've had before, has been really good at moderating kind of a Q&A when a reading is coming to a close. So my book is Anyone's Son. Scott Wickerman did the cover art. That's my husband. And it's my debut collection. As I start, I'm going to say that I have noticed over the years that there's always a narrative drift with me. I've been telling stories since I was 2 years old, and over the years started thinking about, when it comes to poetry, How do I shape narrative, or how do I disrupt it? And in terms of shaping it, I have fallen in love with a pantoum, which involves rolling repetitions in the stanzas. So I'm going to start with two pantoums. The first one is called Farm Outhouse with Mail Order Catalog, 1957. If you're not familiar with pantoums, you will hear echoes. As you turn to the pages of the beautiful men, your fingertips tremble beneath a sliver of sun. You love being alone here where no one can see the beautiful torsos, the beautiful briefs, where your fingertips hover. Light slivers the gloom, sun splashes through peaks made by nails on the beautiful torsos, the beautiful briefs, white against sunlight, white against shadow, apertures dazzling, the gloom sun-splashed. On the earth beneath you, the scarabs are working, black against sunlight, black against shadow, rolling their burdens beyond like little sun gods. The scarabs keep working on the dung beneath you, shaping little dark suns that will feed them tomorrow. These little sun gods back away with their burdens as your fingers return to the underclothed men, shaping bright little suns that will feed you tomorrow. Though your hunger shimmers like motes in this light, your fingertips linger with the underclothed men, while in the corner in shadow a black widow weaves. Your hunger shimmers like motes in this light, where no one can see you, alive and alone. In the corner in shadow, a black widow weaves as you turn through the pages of beautiful men. And the other is also a pantoum. When I worked on this one, I handed a draft to Scott, my husband, and he said, you know what, it's backwards. You need to reverse the order of the stanzas. And of course, by doing that, it meant all the repetitions would be wrong, but I did it anyway, had a lot of fun with it. It's called Lone Star Desires at the 666, subtitled A Pantoum Bent on Misbehaving. Did he wink in your direction? Sound him out laughing. Take a cue stick from the rack on the back wall. Chalk it. Make small talk. Grin. You don't know a thing about this roughneck at the bar. Deliberate. Take a deep breath. Too soon, it's time to drain the dragon. Piss. Buy a tall one for the roughneck as he turns to you laughing at the sign behind the bar. Lucifer drinks at the 666. Make small talk. Grin. He doesn't know a thing about you. Drain your long neck. Drop a greenback for another and let your dragon tame a while. Gun shy for now. Sag, slacken, slouch. Release will come. A sign behind the bar. Beer is but a moment's pleasure. Feel desire unfurl inside your tension. Drain this Lone Star. Drop a greenback for another. The stripes are yours. Smack one into the corner pocket. Or not. Sag, slacken, slouch. Your turn will come again. Light a lucky strike. Inhale and hold. Release. Watch the smoke unfurling like desire. Bend and hold your gaze along the sight line. The stripes are yours. Tap one into the corner pocket. Swallow. Feel your center warming as you light his cigarette from yours. Inhale and hold. Release your breath. Circle the table. Surrender. Turn and rest your gaze along the sight line. One last long neck from the bar. Take a deep, deliberate swallow. Feel yourself dissolving from the center. Take your cue stick to the rack on the back wall. Rack it. Let his words circle yours. Breathe in and out. Surrender. Another thing that I've really enjoyed doing when it comes to the narrative is it's what I call disruption. This poem started when I remembered a party I went to during my college years where one of the lab techs from my hospital part-time job showed up with watermelon punch spiked with tranquilizers and didn't tell anyone. There were some majorly freaked out people by the time the night was over. But then I just started throwing things together. So I call this a disruptive narrative. It's called Feast of the Epiphany. A handful of tranquilizers bootlegged in the champagne punch. The wolf moon dancing your guests loose. Minutes ago, someone's friend put his tongue in your ear. And now a rattlesnake among the cock rings dozing in your bureau drawer. A spider's nest of dicks. Nelly boy in Versace, fingers in the mirror at your deco silk shirt. Whiskers brush your earlobe. Touch me, one man, here, another, here. A prayer for each, smooth beads for each. Pretty boys, they claim to speak for you. Their whispers in your lungs like smoke. Beyond the window, cold flurries the wind chimes, frost in drifts. A bull sniffing the cow's stream. Your ear against the door, you listen to the hunky German piss. Punch fizzing in the flute you saw him holding when he closed the door. Its sugar's gone rank beneath your tongue when you wake. Someone at the piano, Schoenberg, felt-tipped hammers playing the bones above your eyebrows, your kitchen counter adrift in what the celebrants left behind. A single empty Trojan's packet stranded among nibbled cheeses on the gold leaf Limoges. A reminder posted on the fridge, burn your journals from the year of Dieter. Okay, and I'm going to read one more, and this falls into the category again of trying to disrupt the narrative over and over during a period of 20 or more years. I tried to write a poem about an absolutely terrifying nightmare I had when I was 20, and then finally gave up and started braiding it together with kind of an invented dream and fragmenting it on the page. I'm going to hold this, if you can see that. I started moving lines all over the place, and I want to commend Andrea Watson, who's here this evening, my publisher, who encouraged me to experiment with getting away from the left margin. Recurrent dreams, a single strand, 2,000 volts. A fist inside my chest is pounding to get out. Unknown man outside the window of this car 200 miles from where I wake. I'm 12 inside, 12 in the car, 20 by the calendar here. This boarding house deep asleep, silent as 30 years later. A scatter of cattle, spring scent of green, so sharp waking. I am 12 yet again. My city bed, the man asleep beside me, hijacked by a grazing field back home. At the pasture's edge, a single strand, the current humming. At a stop sign 1 mile down the county road, the car I dreamed at 20. Lone man dressed in khaki and shadow says, I will pull the trigger. Inside the wire we string, I get it, Daddy. Even cattle are smart enough. They learn the cost of straying. The gentle ones, a yearling, you made me learn to use the knife. Careful nudging, muzzle at my spine. These cautious moves, we mollify the current dozing in you. I wield the knife, I hum a lullaby to calm him. This boy inside, he trembles at the ugly shock you say is waiting, Daddy, at the line you say is not to be stepped over. At the stop sign, leaning on the car beside my open window, rifle barrel aiming nowhere. Shadow man will make me pull the trigger, make me start with you, brooding at the wheel, bleeding as the sun goes down. I wake this morning from the pasture, its single strand still droning in my chest. Daddy, I don't want to kill you. Just let me duck under the fence. I'm going to stop there. And next, we're going to hear from Bruce Snyder. Bruce is an associate professor at the University of San Francisco. He's the author of 3 poetry collections. Most recently, Fruit is the title. And I decided, because I could, I'm just going to read a soundbite from a review I got to write that's published in the Rumpus of Bruce's book. Bruce Snyder's 3rd collection opens with a statement about physicality. Quote, "The blue whale has the largest heart of any living creature," unquote. This claim serves as both title and launchpad for a poem foregrounded before the opening chapter, as a kind of prelude anticipating what is to come. Poems that anchor us in the lived experience of embodied beings. The prefatory poem ushers a boy into the heart of the whale, a means of measure, a means of taking us into the realm of childhood, the realm of dream. Without further ado, we'll hear from Bruce. It's your turn.
Well, thank you so much, David, and thank you, Bookworks, and thank you, Jill. I mean, it really is so amazing to be back reading with these guys. I mean, we really did, you know, some of the first poems I was really writing that anyone ever read were written in rooms with these guys. And I have to give a shout out also to Allison DeFries, who I see is here, who was also a member of our group, who is an amazing writer whose work I have always loved. So it really does feel like a kind of, you know, family reunion here. And thank you all for coming. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be here. I'm gonna just read a few poems from the new book. And as David said, the book is called Fruit. And it's really a book that came out of, I mean, it's about a lot of things, but it came out of my partner's and my, I think, decision not to have kids. And as someone, I'm the firstborn son of a firstborn son. And I really grew up with this narrative. When I was a kid, my dad used to talk to me about what I would say to my sons one day. And I think I had, when we decided not to have kids, I think it surprised me actually how much I ended up kind of grieving that narrative that had kind of been written into my life, even though it was a very patriarchal narrative. And I think the book is sort of trying to kind of, you know, critique that in some ways as well. But I thought I'd read one of the opening poems in the book, and there are a number of books about reproduction, and this is a book called Litany from My Father's Sperm. And it really came out of the fact that I read this really interesting article that was talking about that the reason we all come into the world, the only reason that the one sperm that is us exists, that makes it to that egg, is that the walls of the woman's vagina is lined actually with this material that is toxic to sperm. And the first sperm that enter this area, they sacrifice themselves and line the walls of the woman's vagina so that the one in the middle can make it through. And so I was just really moved by the fact that we all in some ways owe our existence to the sacrifice of these other possibilities that went before us. And so this is the poem, Litany for My Father's Sperm. And it has a little epigraph. Within an hour, most of the 5 million sperm from a man's ejaculate are dead. O little hounds of Delphi, O dew of youth, this one carried ancient fear and sorrow. It chewed its wormy lips. This one was God's absence, one beat of the hard old heart. It was guesswork and the passage out. It would have loved peanuts. It would have cried itself to sleep. This one slept when it should have awoken. I clawed my way into the world on its back. This one nursed at shadows, shaking its phantom limbs. Job alone in the desert, Moses in his basket freed. Oh, endless river of motion, little Winnebagos on creation's road. You're all lightning and volcano, all whip-tailed fallout from the Big Bang. What do you know of what it means to rest? You're what dies and goes on dying. Blue jays rolling zeros in the nest. So I thought there are a lot of poems that, as I said, are about reproduction, but also about science in various ways. Sort of, this is just one lens I kind of bring to this, the questions that I have in the book. And this is one of them. It's called Chemistry. And I have to say there's a Dutch word in here that I don't know how to pronounce. And I just make it up. And I've asked a number of people, like as I've at readings, like if anybody knows how to pronounce this word, let me know, but nobody has seen, I guess not a lot of people speak Dutch. So chemistry. From the Middle Dutch boele, which means lover, bully was a term of endearment in the 16th century, which meant that a feudal lord could take the hand of his love under the apple trees in spring and exclaim, "My bully," feeling adrenaline flood his body as his heart rate tripled and his palms began to release water mixed with urea, ammonia, salt. Essentially, he could feel what I felt over 4 centuries later when Ian Starkey called me a fag. I was 14, and the next day he kicked me twice, spat in my face, took my glasses, and wouldn't give them back. And the whole time sweat glands were developing in our armpits and genitals, and our adrenals were releasing corticosteroids, and something about testosterone was why, though I hated him, I kept imagining him with his shirt off. True, Ian Starkey knew how to hurt me, but I doubt he knew why he was doing it, or that we feel pain when neurons in the brain convert an electrical signal to a chemical signal and back again, which is also what allows us to feel a kiss, or my brain to take strange comfort, imagining all the boys of the world leaning into the strong arms of their tormentors in spring under the apple blossoms, saying, "I forgive you," saying, "I can never forgive you," saying, "My enemy, my bully, my love." So I thought I would read maybe another one of these science poems. And this again was it's sort of born out of something I'd heard years ago. I feel like I read this when I was a kid, like in a weekly reader or something when I was in junior high, which is that, you know, every time you breathe in a breath, there is an atom from Caesar's last breath. Because of the way oxygen spreads through the universe, the way molecules spread. And actually, I read this whole article that said, actually, there's truth in this, that whenever we breathe out, they spread evenly through the atmosphere. And so I began to just think about this amazing fact that as we're always breathing in the last breaths of all of, you know, the history of people who have died, this recycling. And that's why I wrote the poem. But then, of course, during COVID, this idea of people's breaths took on a whole other sort of resonance. And it suddenly became something even more sort of anxiety ridden. But this is the poem. And it has a little epigraph that the title goes into. The average human breath contains approximately 10 to the 44 molecules, which once exhaled in time spread evenly through the atmosphere. So today, I took in the last breaths of James Baldwin, Marie Curie, Genghis Khan, my great-great-grandmother's breath entering me beside the breath of a Viking slave boy immolated on the flames of his master's burning corpse. I inhaled African queens, Chinese emperors, the homeless man with the bright blue coat down the street. If oxygen is the third most plentiful element in the universe, moving through us like Virgil through the underworld, how long have I tasted the girl drowned among cattails near the murky shore? In ancient Egypt, a priestess packed a corpse with salt, but not before a breath escaped that 2,000 years later entered me, or at least atoms of it, a molecule. Plato theorized atoms in 400 BC, and this morning, outside Athens, I took in his last breath. My lungs damp crypts where Charon's oars dipped into the black waters of the river Styx, not knowing who would pay the ferryman and with what coin, on what tongue. So I'm going to read another poem. I first moved to San Francisco. I don't know how many of you are that familiar with San Francisco, but I lived in the Castro neighborhood, and I lived not far from a bar called Twin Peaks Bar, which is right on the corner of 16th and Castro there. And what's remarkable about the bar is that it has these huge windows. So like when you sit inside, you can see whoever's sitting inside. And when I first moved there, I went talking to the guy, and one of the bartenders that worked there, and we became friends. And one of the things he told me was that this bar, which was a gay bar, was the first gay bar in the country to have windows. And I was really struck by that. And struck, of course, by just the sheer historical fact that that would be, you know, a kind of monumental thing, that this was a bar that now had windows. And so I decided I wanted to write about that. And this is a poem I wrote, and it's kind of a long, my friend calls it a turbo villanelle. It's kind of a very long villanelle. Not that long, but longer than probably it's supposed to be. So, and this has the epigraph called Twin Peaks Bar, San Francisco, and the epigraph is the country's first gay bar with windows. Ralph's working late again. People walking past the window where I sit and stir my drink, his face another shape against the glass. 30 years ago, he still lived in Laplace, and each spring helped his father plant the wheat. Now I watch him at the bar, people walking past, as he makes Cosmos sidecars even a furnace blast. Its secret, so he claims, is 1 part gasoline. His face another shape against the glass. He's seen it all, the Castros fall, the clash of riots, Harvey Milk, parades that lit the street, though he kept working, people walking past porn shops, bakeries, the plague that slashed his boyfriend Ted, the Greek masseur, his face another shape beyond the glass. He calls sometimes his brother in Laplace, remembers barley packed in crates they'd ship to New York, Cincinnati, Montreal. What's past, is all he says, adding a splash of dry vermouth, an olive speared right through its brined and pitted heart inside the glass. He has a walk-in flat at 55, a high firm ass he chalks up to the gym and carrot juice twice a day. So many people can't get past the loss. He shrugs and takes my cash. You'll learn that, doll. He wipes the bar, my own face taking shape against the glass that holds his quickened hands, still mixing grenadine, lemon juice, rum into a silver flask. He turns toward all the people walking past and shakes and stirs and fades into the glass. So I'm going to read just maybe just 2 more shorter poems. And one is a poem that I have a series of poems that are about, I come from a family of hunters, and I grew up in rural Indiana, and my dad has this big gun collection. He's very passionate about guns, and he really is passionate about them. I mean, he talks about the beauty of the guns. He really thinks about them I think the way maybe I think about poetry sometimes. And I was never very, I have two younger brothers. They were a family of hunters, and I was sort of the one oddball. I was the one son, of course, that didn't want to hunt, that didn't want to do anything they wanted to do. And but I've been writing a little bit about kind of gun culture and my family in recent years. And one of the things I started to do was write some poems. I wrote a series of poems that are kind of prayers for the various animals that my father shot. So I thought I would read one of those. This is one. It's called Prayer for the Bear My Father Shot. It hunted squirrel, climbed the vast walnut, knew the silence of the badger in the wood. It tasted sour raspberries, also their thorns. Mornings it drank from streams and nuzzled its young, forgive its trespasses. When it came to the campsite, tore open our cooler and cracked the lantern top, it knew not what it did. Forgive how it bent the tent stakes, how it howled, spit, crawled on all fours. And God, forgive my father, because his heart is old but unfailing, and his vengeance is just like yours.
Wow. Mm.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to just end with this poem, and this is sort of newer work. And I got into this thing during, it was really because of Donald Trump, writing sestinas, because I was teaching the sestina one day. I don't know, some of you are probably familiar with this form. It's one of the most notoriously complex forms, comes from the Middle Ages. And I was teaching it in a class, and I realized, it's a dizzying form. People talk about how it's maddening, it makes you feel crazy. And I realized as I was teaching, I was like, oh my God, we're all living in a sestina in America. Like, honestly, I was like, it's true. Like, this is suddenly, and this form that previously to me I'd always had mixed feelings about it, because it is so strange and it distorts everything. And I suddenly started to think of it as, oh my God, it is the form of our time. Like, nothing captures reality like this form. So this is all my prelude to say that the one part of the sestina that I've never really liked is the envoy, which is this little final stanza where you have to wrap things up. So I was writing sestinas where I would cut the envoy, and I would just write one without it. But then I started thinking, well, I should write some envoys. And I wrote a series of poems called Envoy that are kind of free verse poems that are meditations on goodbye. So I thought I'll end with one of those. So this is Envoy. The end again has brought us here. I'll miss you in the most missable way, as a moon rock misses the astronaut's hand, as a dragon kite misses the sky. The first goodbye must have been something. It must have cracked like thunder. Who can say? Last month, my old friend waved her last goodbye. I miss her every day. Leaving is learning how wind undoes my mother's hair. I've had it with the pine tree's green goodbyes, its needle eyes, its sapling stem. In conclusion, let's start again. Thank you guys very much. It's such an honor to be here. And I believe we have the amazing Jill S Baum up next, who I'm so excited. I'm such a fan.
Right. Jill is next. Just briefly, Jill Alexander S Baum has several poetry collections to her name, and her debut novel, Hausfrau, which came out 4 or 5 years ago, was not only a bestseller, but has been translated into 27 languages. Before we begin this evening, I confess that Jill gives me an acute case of envy. Okay, and I'm going to quote just from the blurb that goes with her book. Woodland is an adventure in wordplay and the discoveries of our heart and heart truths that language in its inevitable slippage can reveal. And the slips of both language and self are what's at stake here. Oscillating between elegiac and epigrammatic, S Baum's poems share at once the ecstasies of sound and syncopation of a modern day Gerard Manley Hopkins and the acerbic insights of a more sensuous Dorothy Parker. with a little of Emily Dickinson's taut ferocity for the sublime thrown in. I love that quote. Gerard Manley Hopkins, Dorothy Parker, and Emily Dickinson. Anyway, you're in for another treat hearing from Jill. Jill, go ahead. Take it over. Read to us.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for arranging this, David. And thank you, Bruce, for reading. And I don't thank y'all for writing such amazing poems that my offerings are like, I want to write like y'all. I always have. It's been listening to y'all. I think back to the work that we did, however a million years ago, and I see echoes of it. I hear it. It's changed and shifted, but it's all, it's kind of the proof of concept that we never leave our wheelhouse in some way or another. And thank you so much. And thank you all for being here, those of you who I know and those I don't. It's nice to see your faces. I have like a practice that I do before every reading, just so I don't, it keeps me honest. So I always read a poem that I wrote just before the reading. So I'm gonna read this poem. It doesn't have a title. One of the things that has happened for me during the pandemic is I've been able to get so much writing done. And I've been doing it by giving myself exercises, not so much prompts, but timed writing exercises. And one of them that I do every day is I write a timed sonnet. And it doesn't have to be good, but it's under 14 minutes and 14 seconds, because 14. And I did a whole round of them in rhyme, but not meter. And now I'm in the middle of doing the metered, but not rhymed. So we're going to see if the next round is going to put them together, but I don't think I can do that in 14 minutes. But this is that poem that I wrote today. There's nothing but the snow. There's nothing but the now, the no. There's nothing. But the earth is wombed and white tonight, and ice slicks down all roads. I'm not at home. Last night I wrote a word in frost. By morning it was ghost. There's nothing that cannot be lost. There's nothing but the knowing now. This ice, this night. Above, the moon's a sight for sore eyes eyesore, marring skies unflinching pitch. That's all there is. To freeze is to believe. My God, your meanness cannot be unseen. That's something, no? You are an avalanche composed of soul-cold so-called hopes I somehow own, and lusts I did not choose, but can't control. And I always know they're like little, I don't know, it just keeps you honest. I like doing that. My book, Woodland, came out last year. Cooper Dillon Books. It's a great little press. If you don't know Adam Deutsch, he runs it. He's one of the most, one of the best literary citizens I know. You may want to check this press out and their other books. This book was kind of the culmination of a decade. Well, it was a decade of writing, and what came out of 2 very bad years living out of the country with who is now an ex-husband. But you get work out of it, and that's something. And so I'm just going to read a couple, or a few. This one is called A Suitcase. Oh, and I'm going to try and do ones that are sad and then ones that are happy and funny. And, I'm going to try and alternate so we don't get to cry. A suitcase isn't suited for suits, truth told. Most useful when holding what's easy to fold. Pants, for example, or anything slack. A jacket, like breasts in a too tight dress, won't fit unless crammed in. All spills out, we jam it back. but rumpled twill will never flatter anyone, and blazers take ages to iron. How depressing then, that deadweight haversack, some saddlebag I'm saddled with, the sadness I packed like a school trip sack lunch. Everyone's got baggage, each of us, a case in point. Like you, a coat that is woven of gold and gone. I've nothing left to carry on. So that one is, yeah, that one, we're gonna call that one kind of a happy one. This is a poem called Greifensee, and I lived outside of Zurich for those 2 years. And the only thing you need to know is Greifensee is the second largest lake in Canton Zurich. And the word, it means griffin sea, but it looks like grief. So, you know, that's the wordplay there. Greifensee. Let's say you're a man whose summer suit is white. You're on a stroll around a lake in mid-July when a woman on a bicycle rides past you. She's small and pale as lace, transparent in a way that makes you wonder whether she's a ghost. But let's say that she's not. And let's say when she passes you, she turns around to wink or pedals slower, maybe stops. And let's say that she's young and that her face has claimed your memory. And in that moment, you forget whatever it was you thought you knew about a woman at all, what she wants, where she hides her promises, and how an empty room might be your enemy. It's after afternoon, and soon the sun will set upon the matte black lake, and you will fall in love before moonrise, impossible though it sounds, and you will hide among her willows. She will call you soldier man because you're very, very brave. A brick box begs to be unlocked, and you're the key, she'll say. And even the ring-necked duck will blush. Her sentences are prayers. The day proves providential. You thank God. Now, let's say none of this is true. It's not a summer suit you wear, but a thick wool jacket zipped to your chin. There is no man, no bicycle, and you are the only woman in this scene. You move by power of broken leg, a metaphor, but still. And mid-July is really early March, and it's damn cold. The air is gray, opaque with rain and a terrible practical hate. And you are vague and pale as lace. The coins you toss have no coincidence, and you've forgotten what you want. And every empty room's your enemy, and everything's an empty room. It's almost noon, and soon the bells of the old stone church will ring and ring, and you're old too. You do not stop or slow or turn around. There are no willows. You're alone. A brick box beckons you inside of it. Nothing of you isn't ghost. You've fallen, but it's not in love. And the problem with hell is that it's eternal. The lake is matte black. There are no prayers. There is no God. A fog comes in. When it rolls out, the birds are gone. You ever write something and like you read it and you're like, oh shit, I remember when I wrote that because I was like super sad. And so then you tell people, oh my gosh, do you remember when I wrote that? I was super sad, because you laugh about it and then you feel a little bit better. This next poem, thank y'all for indulging me, is called Parting Song. First, it is one day without you, then two, and soon our point moot, and our solution diluted, and our class action, if ever was, is no longer suited, wherewith I give to looting through the war chest of our past, like some wily Anne Bonny who snatches at plunder or graft. But the wreck of that ransack, that strongbox, our splintering coffer, the clap-trap bastard of the best we had to offer, is sog-soaked and clammy, empty but for sand, like the knuckle-white cup of my urging ghastly hands, in which nothing but the ghost of love is held. Damn it to hell. I'm just gonna read a couple more. Now, should I read the most ridiculous poem I've ever written in my life? Like seriously, the most ridiculous one? Okay.
Please do.
All right. I tried to count how many puns were in this poem. If somebody can give me an accurate count of, I mean, of course you gotta buy the book, of how many puns are in this poem, I'll send you a handmade sewn felt hamburger or something. I don't know. The word for tree in German is Baum. And I call this poem S Baum, you know, like S Baum. S Baum. We, tree, I'm speaking to you. It's noon, and the mood in which I'm currently planted is as usual to me as the spruce groves in Norway. Slow going, slow gone. If yours were the laurels I longed for, I lost. But ash to ash, as is said, there is no mist tree here. In your orchard I grew elder, but the age of us never became me. Like an ersatz ficus in a snazzed up parlor, I was out of your order, your ardor, your arbor. Hello, tallow, it's juniper, it's June. I lumber through the clumsiest of fuck yous. It isn't a clear-cut retort. Mulberry, I've mulled you over. Never con a conifer, nothing lucky in our clovers. True, we sat by the sea as lovers, but not all beaches cease. We leave them, right? Tamarack oak, take back your oaths. Let's settle it with this seed her settlement. Neither for worst, nor best, nor work, nor forest, nor thicket, nor thick of it. Not for the aspen, not for the asp, neither the hemlock's lockbox, nor the pine box I'll bury my pining in once it dies, nor the bitter quinine orders you barked, nor the cork that held my heart's hole closed when even under pressure of my palms, I couldn't stop the run of resin and I stayed trapped for years in the lacquer and the lac. When is a walnut a door? When the sign reads, entry, when there is no exit. I don't give a fig about your apples, Adam. In Eden, you gave me your name. Linden? No, it is no loan. I earned it. I'll keep it. I should. Even if it burns like poison would. So, a little bit ridiculous. Thank y'all for indulging me. Two more. Maybe one more. So that was kind of funny. So now we're going to read like a scary one. Thank y'all so much for this. I kind of want to give a shout out to someone who I don't think is here, but we invited, but it was the man whose class we were in when we all met, David Wevel, who is an amazing poet. If you don't know him at all, go look him up right now. He was probably the best teacher I've ever had. He taught me how a poem moves and how a poem takes its own cues from itself, and that author intent is ultimately bullshit. And I just am so grateful that I was able to be in his class. And I'm so grateful that I was able to be with y'all. So thank you. She spent a year hallucinating birds. They perched on roofs and fences and sills. They posed statue still on catenary lines. They aligned along cables like prayer beads on rope. They amassed en masse on the cemetery lawn and marauded the broad yawning fields like cattle. Their cackles were black. Each shadow dove and pecked. They nested in chimneys and chirped at the chime of the church bell. They worked in shifts, clocked out at odd hours. They laid their eggs in the V's of trees. They teemed on the dry baked banks of creeks, streams the sun had overseen. They teetered on the bed knob tops of flagpoles. They pitched like pennies into founts or babies into wells. They paced her train and lunged the platform when she disembarked. They thumped her doors, then skulked away like hoodlum teens. They jabbed her. When she cried, they did it faster. Everyone knows what happened next. They grew in size, they multiplied in some as big as sunflower stalks, others tall like bonfire flames, or moving bands, or the sick brick houses people die inside of every night. Their hatchlings canopied the sky. Was it her fault then when they pinned her to the ground and thrust their feathers down her throat? Or wormed between her legs in bad man ways? Or rattled plumes and whooped and beat her body with their wings? Or locked their talons to her thighs and tra-la-la, that ditty from the old time music box? They forced their whiskeys past her lips and put her in the pillory. This was foreplay in a way. They rolled in rabbit packs and woofed like dogs. She couldn't throw a bone. The meat was gone. They chased her and they named her and they boiled her tears and bathed her. Then they ate her. Thank y'all so much. I really appreciate it.